Oh, well, namaste, Studio 108 community. I'm so glad you clicked in. I am here with Leah Cordy again. If you remember, Leah was here just a couple months ago, 6, 8 weeks ago, and we talked about Hope's Landing, her nonprofit. Maybe you've been down to Banyan Tree and you see now that she's got her candles on the shelves there. So still growing, still expanding.
Yep, staying busy.
Staying busy, right? That's what you said. I said, "What's going on, Leah?" And she's like, "Oh, just like you." Because I was rushing around. She's like, "Just like you, just rushing around,
Yeah.
small business people." But you actually have a day job in addition to your nonprofit.
Yes, I do. I stay very, very busy.
Very busy. As Leah was packing up and kind of getting out of the studio last time, she was telling me about her day job, and I said, "Wait, come back." So I'm like, before you leave, let's put another conversation on the books because this is really interesting. Like you are making an impact in so many different directions. Like mad respect for whatever flow comes through you that you just allow to take you to all these different nooks and crannies and places because you're a force.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you just made my day.
Right? Well, we think that the forces are like the movie stars and the pro athletes. We think forces are like those big people in our society, but that's not the case, at least not anymore.
Yeah.
The force people are the people that are like doing something with their own individual life and their own individual community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, girl, you can get it. You know those scripted necklaces?
Yeah.
The next time you walk in, I want to see it. Back off.
Yeah.
So true. Okay, so tell us about your job. You're a community relations connection person for a utility scale, like a large scale solar energy company. And we want to learn a little bit more about that and what solar energy can do, where it's going, and how we can jump on board and just participate in a more conscious way of living.
Absolutely. So I was always interested in the renewable energy industry because as someone who is as young as I am, I've heard about climate change my entire life. So it's something that has always been really important to me. But I've always worked in nonprofit. And so I didn't necessarily see myself working for a privately owned company. However, when Geenex reached out to me for a job and they told me all of these things that they were doing to better our planet and be really intentional about the relationships that we're forming with landowners and farmers and different communities, I was like, okay, you can work for a private company. It doesn't necessarily have to be a nonprofit, but you can still make a difference. And so
100%. And I think we need to take a breath on that.
Yeah.
Because there's so much truth in what you just shared about your generation, about your generation's view of big business, about your generation's dream for the future and hope for the future and what you guys want to work towards. Like, well, first of all, I'm old, so I will say thank you. But I also feel like it's worth just pausing and appreciating because I know my own kids are in that, 30s kind of cusp time. And I keep telling them, the big things, the way things have been happening, are that all that's going to crumble and collapse.
Yeah.
Someone's got to be there to lift up the underbelly and these new ideas and these new initiatives. There are corporations that are behaving responsibly and moving us forward.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being open to that.
Yeah, and I'm so thankful for Geenex for being a company that I can proudly work for. I honestly wasn't sure that I was ever going to find a business that was doing something at this scale that I could truly respect and like want to be a part of it and feel like my morals and values were not compromised even slightly. And I can confidently say that I get to feel that confidence in this company every single day.
I love that so much.
Yeah, and there's a lot of solar companies now, and there's some solar companies that are doing it the way that we are, where we are truly engaging with the communities. We are truly doing business the right way. We're not trying to sell you anything that's not true, or that's going to backfire in the future. We truly are doing everything the right way. There are some solar companies that kind of prey on different individuals if they're elderly and they might not completely understand everything that's being pitched to them. And so when I first interviewed with this company, I had told someone that I was interviewing for a solar company, and they said, all right, well, make sure you ask a lot of questions because in that industry that there are some people that are again, preying on the elderly or different populations that just might not have all the facts. And if the company's just after money, then, you know, you really never know. But
well, I think that's a really good point for any industry, but also like, remember, I see those ads on social media.
Yeah.
And I should be suspicious of that. I
Yeah.
shouldn't just assume that because it's solar, it's good, because
Yeah.
they're marketing green. What's that word called for when, greenwashing, right?
Yeah.
When companies like market all kinds of green friendly,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a facade, it's a marketing tool rather than a real philosophy.
Yeah, and then it gives companies like us a bad rep, because if they've had one bad experience with solar in the past, and then we come and, you know, we want to talk to them about using their land or their business or, you know, any of the above, then they think, oh, well, we don't want to work with them because they're a solar company. And so unfortunately, when there's one business in the same industry that has done things poorly, then that affects all of the good businesses.
Yeah.
And so part of my job is making sure that Geenex, the face of us, is really positive. We're genuine, we're authentic. We are not trying to hide anything from you. We want to partner with you.
Right.
We don't want to be enemies. We truly want to be a member of the community and partner with whoever we can.
That's outstanding. Okay, so we need to learn a little bit more about Geenex, right?
Yeah.
Geenex.
Geenex.
Speaking of authenticity, that's just how I roll. At about 70% accuracy. Are they local?
So Geenex is based in North Carolina.
Okay.
And then we have offices in Dublin, Ohio,
Okay.
and then Indianapolis. And so I work mostly in Western Ohio. So Geenex, we develop utility scale solar projects. So these are the big solar farms that you see that they can power entire cities.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
they're the big ones. They're not like what you see on someone's roof, or like at like a school. They're these really big projects.
You're definitely not marketing on social media.
No. And so since they're based in North Carolina, they have staff that's spread out all across the eastern side of the country. So we work in a grid called PJM. And so that is the grid that the East Coast has, Ohio has, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and down to North Carolina. And so those are the areas that we have developed solar projects in, because that is the grid that we can plug into in those areas.
Gotcha.
So anything in this area of Ohio, the grid that's giving us our electricity is called PJM. So I'm obviously, I live in Cleveland. I do work in Western Ohio, which luckily that's where Hope's Landing is. So I have lots of ties there already. I'm a pretty non-threatening face.
Yeah.
I'm just the candle company girl. But we do have staff in Pennsylvania. We have staff in Southern Ohio that they have projects in Indiana or Kentucky. So we're all kind of spread out, but we really make an effort to make sure that we are in our project communities weekly, even if we don't live there.
Gotcha. So I have a couple questions for those of us in the back of the room who are just thinking about this for maybe the first time. Your company puts up those solar farms with all the tall white things and the little pinwheels. It's like, so never really thought about like, how does that work? You're creating an energetic product. You're capturing from the sun, creating this energetic product, and that gets sold then or distributed to the electric companies?
Yes. So there's lots of different ways that that portion of it kind of happens. Sometimes the people that are buying the energy, sometimes it's someone like Bill Gates or Amazon. There are agreements for big businesses like that. Most of the time, you're working with a local electric company or a co-op. So for instance, in Western Ohio, we will eventually be working with North Central Electric Co-op. But it really just depends on where the solar project is. If there's any big businesses around it that need the carbon credits, or if it really is just going to be a partnership with the local.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if I said, Studio Runaway is a really big operation here, and I would love to source our own solar energy, I could like call And you would say, oh, we have like already a solar farm. Or I might say, listen, I want to invest my money in creating a solar farm that would fuel my business. Do you do smaller projects like that, or is it all like pretty much?
We typically don't do smaller
Gotcha.
projects like that. There are plenty of companies that do.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, Ohio is a very difficult state to develop solar in. There's a lot of opposition against solar. There's been some really big fights across the state with wind energy. And when all of that was happening, when people were going to these town meetings and, getting all angry, posting these crazy things on Facebook, none of them were really paying attention to solar because they just hated wind. They hated
Gotcha.
the look of it. These
Yeah,
things
they
are
didn't like
super
those big white
tall.
trees.
Yeah, yeah. And then once that kind of got ruled out, that you really can't do wind in many places in Ohio, then people started attacking solar. And so that's why you need a community relations person. You can't just go in and develop a project. You need someone in my position to go into these communities and debunk the myths, to make sure that this solar farm that's potentially being built is not this terrifying thing. They can truly see the benefits of
Gotcha.
it.
When you take that land and put the solar, are you able to grow crops like under or around? Is there any like cooperative use?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's actually some new technology that's currently being developed. So it's called agrovoltaics. And basically what that means.
Another word I can't
Yeah.
say.
So what that means is that you can do both. You can both farm and have a solar farm.
Yeah,
So
that would be super, super intelligent.
yeah, and so that's new technology, but now you can have sheep growing or not growing, grazing under the solar panels. They're
Yeah.
really high, so
Yeah.
there's plenty of room underneath. Plus, it gives them some shade, and you can still grow grass or alfalfa. We also can plant wildflowers, so there's lots of pollination happening, bringing in the bees.
Yeah.
And there's more and more being studied about like actual crops, like corn in between the solar panels and things like that. Geenex hasn't developed a project yet that we're doing that with, but there was a project that just got approved in Ohio, Oak Run Solar, and it's going to be the biggest project in Ohio. I believe it's down in Madison County, and it's going to be this huge project, but they are doing agrivoltaics. And so we're really, really excited for that company to develop that, because they're kind of setting the stage for the future of solar.
Absolutely, and kind of turning around the attitude.
Exactly, yeah, because so far, a lot of the opposition that we hear is you're taking prime farmland, you're taking away our crops. And with this, you don't necessarily have to choose. This solves one of the biggest issues that people have with it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's in support, like it gives a second business, like it's a second income stream for a business.
Yeah.
For a farm.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. All right, I heard you say myths.
Yes.
So let's go to the myths. Let's like kind of debunk some of the myths.
Yeah. So a lot of times my job is just debunking myths. I'm trying to make friends. I'm really trying to get people on board with solar, but a lot of times that simply means setting the record straight.
Right.
So one of the myths that we hear a lot is that we're producing this solar energy and then it gets sent to Texas or California, and it's not actually benefiting the local community. And what people don't realize is transferring energy any certain distance is really expensive.
Yeah, and not all that. I mean, what do? You load it up in semis? Like, how does it even transfer? Yeah, I mean, there's a pipeline.
Yeah, it can get, I guess, like shot to different places where it's needed, but it's so expensive to move that that's not really what will ever happen. So it stays roughly in a community, if not, maybe a county or two over, but yeah, it's staying in a region, and so the local people are directly benefiting from it. Other people say that it's bad for the local economy. Solar is horrible for the economy, and we actually see the exact opposite.
I wonder how it would be horrible for the economy.
Yeah, that same.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think my thought would be like, oh, they're getting it from the sun, it's kind of free, so wouldn't my bills go down? But I don't think that's maybe the primary even concern. The concern is that it's sustainable and it's replacing something that isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
That's a really big thing to
Yes.
have happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we talk about when that gets brought up, because, okay, solar is this newer industry, but that also means that these other industries are, going to get smaller and smaller. Right now, to be honest, the grid needs both. We need both renewables and non-renewables, because our grid as it stands, if everybody had an electric car today, if everybody had a Tesla, we could not operate as a country.
It would take too much electricity.
There just wouldn't be enough. And so right now we need both gas cars and electric cars, but we just need to keep growing like this, just incrementally.
Yeah.
But the energy needs that are projected in a couple years, I mean, Ohio's going to be doubling its energy demand. And right now we are, because of all
Who's doing this?
well, because of things like electric cars.
Gotcha.
Because there's so many things that are trying to change over to being green.
Gotcha.
Which is great that technology is moving in the right direction. But that also means
to keep up.
we need to keep up. And when projects get denied because of myths, then it's like in 2 years, when you can't turn your lights on because there's not enough energy in the grid, you're gonna wish that you supported that solar project.
Right. It's the least of your worries.
Yeah. So back to the economy, how that kind of plays in. So it's actually great for a community as far as economic development. There's a lot of tax money that gets put into the community when you build a solar farm. The bigger the project, the more money the community is getting, and that money goes towards the local government. That money goes towards the schools. Anything that is happening in that local area that the taxes can't support, that project will support.
Gotcha.
And then on top of it, Geenex does a really great job of taking it a step further, and we make sure that the landowners are well taken care of financially. We make sure that the neighbors are happy. So we've done something called the Sun Initiative, and basically we will cover the electric bills, or at least a portion of the electric bills, for the landowners that we utilize and their neighbors. So everyone's happy. This project is not affecting you in a negative way. It's actually helping you. And then in some of our communities, we launch grant programs for local nonprofits.
Wow.
And once we're done with the project, we actually set up an endowment with the local community foundation. So that money keeps growing and growing, and that money is still going into the community long after we're gone. Right. So there's lots of opportunity for growth. Some communities, they get a whole new school system because of how much money is going into the community.
The tax base, for them. That's outstanding.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. Well, I think probably the burning question about solar in Ohio is it even sunny enough? How much sun is required?
Yeah.
Because it's a little grim around here.
Yeah,
and I would starve to death if I
So the cool thing about solar is, while yes, in the middle of the night, it is not producing energy. Okay. That is true. But even on a cloudy day, there is still energy being produced. So it doesn't have to be, no clouds, 100% sunny all the time in order for solar to work.
Does it create more energy when it's bright and sunny and less when it's cloudy? Or is it just daylight is all it needs?
I think that there is like a slight variation, but it's not as drastic as you would think it would be. But luckily, the time of day that you need it the most is probably when it's going to be the sunniest.
Right.
And so at night, people are like, oh, well, it's not generating energy. Well, that's actually okay, because unless everyone in town has their lights on at 3 a.m.
Does it store?
That's a great question. That's something that we're working on now, and that's also new technology. Solar is just constantly developing. Yeah. But yeah, there is battery storage that is being developed, and so some of our projects that we're working on now will have that. So essentially, you see a solar farm, you see miles and miles of solar panels, and then in the middle of it, or kind of off-site, you might see this huge thing. It almost looks like a shipping container. Yeah. And inside there are all of these batteries that are storing solar.
They're like charging.
Yeah. And so that's going to be huge for this industry, because
what if there were solar cars?
Yeah, I mean, eventually. right now our grid can't.
Sorry. I think I stumped her. She was like, I'm good with this conversation. And so was one of the cars, you know, it was just like so random. Sorry. It was like, wow, this is like so interesting.
Yeah, but when you start to think about it, there are so many different ways that you can put renewable energy into daily life that can change everything.
Right.
And that will actually cost everyone less money because like you said, it's free, it's the sun. You
Yeah.
don't have to,
God willing, we'll have it.
yeah, exactly, and even on a cloudier day, that doesn't mean that you're not generating any electricity.
Right.
So yeah, there's plenty of opportunity for renewables. We just have to get people over the myths.
Over the myths. Okay, I'm gonna tell another distracting story because this is entertainment. And this was in 2016, so this was quite a while ago. I had taken a retreat just like we did in March to Costa Rica, the same center. And at that point, that center was only 2 years old. So they were in their infancy of developing their sustainability initiative, and they were living on solar, which they do now, but now they have higher tech equipment. This wasn't a problem this time. But in 2016, it was very clear, made very clear to us, first day, we'd really appreciate you not using hair dryers because they suck so much electricity. We were there during the rainy season. There was a little bit less sun. And they wanted to make sure they had enough power for the kitchen. So they were like, please don't. And sure enough, one night, about 4 nights in, some poor love just couldn't take it another day and had to do their hair. And I get it. I mean, it had been like enough. So, but yeah, and they ran out of solar. Yeah, they ran out of power, and they had candles everywhere, and they were so gracious to us. And I was just like, you guys are so sweet. But it's exciting to be a part of even the blunders that happen. It felt like, oh, like this happened and it was inconvenient and we could get grumpy and criticize, but actually how exciting to be a part of a new conversation and a new initiative and the growth and development of something that could really bring us to a better place.
Definitely.
So yeah, thanks for doing the work you do.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And again, this directly affects my generation and the future generations. And so I love that I get to do not one, but two things that are super fulfilling to me. And again, I never thought that I would get that from a private business, but it's incredible to know that you just gotta find the right one.
Absolutely. Force.
Yep.
And also like this idea that you have to, excuse me, that you have to like work your way to. Like, yes, sometimes we have to start in small beginnings and we have to kind of work our way, but be discerning and really dig around. There are things out there.
Yeah.
There are things out there.
Yeah, and when I was approached with this position, I got a message on LinkedIn. And I think everything that I get on LinkedIn is spam. So I almost never reply to anything.
Absolutely.
And for whatever reason, this guy reached out and I was not looking for a job at the time, but for whatever reason, I just felt like I should answer this guy. And so I did, and we had a call. I still didn't even think that I was going to be interested because I was so happy at my job and I was working for a nonprofit and it was really fulfilling for me. And then I had a call with him and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really interesting. And I could make an impact while also being able to support myself and support my family and work towards a greener future.
Yeah, and it's resource. Okay, so like you're offering your skills and your talents and your gifts and your essence, your force essence, because there's a certain energy about you that's having an impact in this role. Like they hired you in this role because of the way your energy flows through you and the way you handle yourself. And then you get the resource. And look how that lets you have the confidence and the stability to support your nonprofit when it's in its infancy and isn't quite as steady yet as maybe it will be one day, right?
Yeah.
But it's like this resource, like our lives are a much bigger picture of purpose. Our lives are a much bigger picture of providing, right? Like you're provided for so that you can do all of this. And it's not, tied specifically to a task you did at this time, but just the general big picture of your life.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I love that alignment when you talk about, your stories and your passions and why you do what you do. There's like such beautiful alignment in that.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. Tell us what kind of action steps, what kind of things we can do to kind of be on board and be on top of it We want to keep up. We want to keep up with the times.
So, I mean, the first thing that I can think of is just using as little electricity as possible. Like I said, our grid can barely handle what we're putting out now. And we really just need to either be building a lot of solar and wind farms,
Right.
which we're not building as many as we really need to, or we need to be using less electricity, and less electricity is always going to help, even when those levels of renewable are up to what we need. Still, the less energy that we're using, the better, especially for right now. And
It's
so,
kind of just responsible.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, in the world that we live in, so many people work from home. You're constantly on your laptops, your phone. And I mean, I'm doing the same thing because I need to for my job, for my life. But just making sure that you're not leaving lights on, you're not leaving the TV on. You know, I know some people
Oh my
that
gosh, I grew up in the 70s. Leaving the bathroom light on when you walked out of the room was like a crime in my family.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
energy, like conservation of energy was like
Mhm.
really a very literal thing.
Yeah.
Just due to the finances, due to the, the culture that was happening in the 70s.
Yeah.
So we've kind of lost it. We're really, really privileged.
Yes.
Sloppy.
And people do not realize that we are so much closer. We are currently in an energy crisis. I don't know if you knew this about me, I studied abroad in South Africa for 6 months.
Cool.
And it was an incredible experience. However, they were having an extreme energy and water crisis. And so they did something called load shedding, where they would purposely turn off power, so it was scheduled blackouts, for it could be 6 hours a day.
Wow.
And you had to schedule your life around when there were going to be blackouts. That meant you couldn't do your homework if you needed your laptop. You couldn't cook if you needed something with electricity.
Whoa.
And that was how we lived our lives. And I mean, we would have candles burning.
During the day?
Yeah, sometimes during the day, sometimes during the night, but it changed every week. But we dealt with this every week. And so when people in America are saying, okay, well, that was South Africa. Well, that's going to be
Well,
here.
South Africa is pretty populated and culturalized. South
Yeah,
Africa is,
they're pretty developed.
yeah, it's not like it's the savannah.
Exactly. Yeah. They have, I mean, I was living in a city.
Yeah.
And this was just a reality for them. And I could only shower for a minute and a half. That was all you had. And if somebody
Whoa.
didn't do their part in conserving water, you weren't going to have water. So everyone, you just do your part.
Yeah.
And over there, it's something that they're used to, unfortunately. And so it wasn't that big of a deal. But to us Americans, we were like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. We have to, you know, do our homework outside of this 6 hour window because otherwise you're not going to be able to. And there were some areas that had generators, but not many. And so those were overpopulated, so you couldn't go to the library or anything like that. And so that could be a very real reality for not just Ohioans, but across the country sooner than we think.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we talk about energy conservation, the radiant heaters over here are smacking on. I mean, like, yeah, we all have to do our part, but hold on, while I keep this room to 90 degrees for you. Yeah. But they are programmed and they are an efficient way of bringing the heat up in the room compared to other means of heating the room. So,
yeah,
you know, trying to do a part, but.
And sometimes that technology to be more energy efficient is a little more expensive. Sometimes it's actually cheaper. It really just kind of depends on what you're dealing with. But either way, everyone has to be doing their part.
We just really need to be conscious of it.
Yes, yes.
Don't leave it to the other person to do.
Exactly.
Do it yourself.
Yep, and that was kind of the attitude when I was in South Africa. You couldn't leave it up to everybody else hoping that they were only going to shower for a minute so you could have it. Yeah, exactly. Like you just couldn't do that because if everybody didn't do their part, we were going to run out of water. We were going to run out of energy. And so in many cases we did. And again, that's going to happen here if we don't get our act together.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the straight talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. You know, it's interesting too, how the experiences in your life kind of teach you things or bring your awareness to things, and then it kind of weaves into other stories down the road. So I love that story, like that was your experience for a reason.
Yeah,
super cool.
And now I can say that to people, and they're like, "Oh, that sounds
true,
scary."
authenticity.
Yeah, it's not just an article they read; it's me telling them this was my life.
Yeah, super cool. Anything else? What else should we know?
I think, I guess another myth is that solar as a business, as an industry, and farmers don't necessarily like each other. I think that there's a lot of, again, myths with farmers. If they hear from a solar developer, they're like, these people are trying to screw me over. And I guess the reality that I want people to know is that we want to work with farmers. My brother is a farmer. I grew up in a very rural community, so I understand that side of things. I actually, yeah, and I actually used to show cows at the county fair. There's plenty of old pictures of me, but
I showed horses.
Nice. And so we want to partner with the farmers, and we do that through leasing their land. So they lease it to us, and for 40 years, they don't have to do anything. We just build our solar panels, and they make a very good amount of money to let us do that. And then it's a great way to keep land in the family. So a lot of times people are like, well, the next generation doesn't want to farm, so I'm gonna sell my farm. But if you lease it to us, in 40 years, that land is still gonna be in the family. And now,
And if you're multi-purposing with it too, it actually is a really nice gift to give.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you don't,
And it keeps other maybe less desirable development from happening.
exactly, yep, because if you're building a housing development, in 40 years, that's still gonna be there, and you're never getting that back.
But yeah, the solar panels could be up and moved.
Yep.
Or something, you
Yep.
know, if they weren't relevant anymore.
Exactly, and so we decommission them, you know, we're gonna take them out and make sure that the land is good to go, and then you can farm on it again.
Yeah, and you're not polluting their soil.
Exactly. In fact, we're actually making it a lot better, because if you let soil sit for 40 years, good soil sit for 40 years, you are going to have probably the most prime farmland in the county.
Actually,
because all of
yes.
those nutrients
Have regenerated themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, super good.
So yeah, I always want people to know, like, farmers are our friends, not foe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And to think about, like, that's really an interesting walk to take down the long term of solar versus other forms of energy too. That,
Yeah.
that it is kind of restoring the land and leaving it safe harbor,
Yeah.
you know, for the land.
Yeah. People just don't like change. It's scary. And
Yeah.
so my job is really like to tell people this doesn't have to be scary. This could be a huge benefit for you, but let's just get past those myths. Let's just get
Well, I
past.
think trust is a big thing too.
Yep.
Like, you found a company that you trust.
Yes.
And you have this force that makes you trustworthy to people. And so it's a really nice match for the company and for you and
Yeah.
for the farmer.
Yeah.
Like, maybe not everyone would have that kind of trust, but you're really building those bridges. And so
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
But yeah, I think that's my main thing.
I know, right? Well, we hope you enjoyed that and that you learned something, and share it with someone. This, you know, sometimes we do conversations that are a little more specific to the yoga community, but this is really relevant to everyone. So if you've got a mom, dad, sister, brother, friend, coworker, share it, because, you know, this energy thing impacts every single person.
Absolutely.
So no exceptions.
Yeah.
Share it with your pup.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leah. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah. And you guys, thank you so much for following. Namaste. Where's my thing?